Well, you take an organization that is hammer and tongs on the subject of creativeness. The Roman Catholic Church is no propaganda in this at all. It's just the fact that they do really have the hatchet out on the second dynamic, you know. I mean, they're real fraudy on this subject. They don't think any creation ought to be done that can possibly be prevented. You realize that from their literature. And they actively oppose any material being segregated, which in any way, shape, or form informs about, cures, or as-is, or has anything to do with the eradication of venereal disease, because they think it's a good thing. And VD programs in New York City in the recent decade or so ran into the heavy weather of Catholic propaganda. They were just hot on this. They wouldn't let anything be shown to educate people into VD, educate them into what it was or how to take care of it or anything else. They spent enormous sums of money. I see you're looking very blank about it, but this, I guess I'm telling you something that's news to you. This is not news to anybody in the medical profession. They, as a matter of fact, are quite hot on the subject. That somebody would prevent the public from knowing actively how to take care of themselves on the subject of VD, of course, condemns the rest of the population to contagion, unwitting contagion, and so forth. This is somebody is idiotically explaining how cancer is all right, you know. It's okay, you know. It's a good cure. Well, of course, VD is a cure for sex. That's all it is. Actually, there's a terrifically heavy incidence of VD amongst military personnel. Why? Well, I don't know. For some reason or other, people get into armies and navies and so forth, and they don't run into any women. I think it's very unenterprising. I've never had the trouble myself. But they do. They get into camps and things like this, and there are no women, you see. And they get on board ships, and they're gone for some time at sea, and there's no women. I don't know who perpetuates this weird idea. I know I wrote the Navy Department in 1942 and said we could use 7 or 8 girls on board. They didn't. Actually, it would have been a good thing, having nothing to do with second dynamic, because we couldn't get any sailors to man the guns, because we had to do all the cooking and yeoman work and so forth with fighting men, you see. But I got interested in this one day, because we had numerous cases of VD, a very unlovely subject. And, of course, these cases are sort of lined up on my docket as something I had to do something about. And when you're working in expeditions or corvettes or something like this, you seldom have a doctor, or the doctor is dead drunk or something. You sail out of a port, and you've got 7 out of a crew of 100 men totally incapacitated. That can be very serious when you're already short-handed, you see. VD. So, of course, you break out the knockout drops and the sulfathiazole and the penicillin and so on, and you let them have it. Well, what was very interesting to me, a little Jewish boy. He was a terrific yeoman. He was marvelous. And he must have been all of about 18, something like this. He's quite a little guy. And his name was Heine. And Heine came down with a roaring case of VD out on the Pacific coast. And it's very interesting because all Heine had to do was think of the girl, you see, and he'd practically go up through the funnel. And we went out to rescue a careless pilot who had mistaken the middle of the Pacific for his landing field. And Heine was hauled off the ship by the local medic. And Heine, in tears, came by as they were dragging him away, literally dragging him away, you see. Because here's his ship going to sea, my God, you know, and here he was being hauled over on the dock. And he says to me, Captain, I have never had anything to do with a woman. Never in my whole life. How could I have venereal disease? And he dragged him over on the dock. Doctors are suspicious lot. And we came back, having not found the aircraft, and the Army, I think they forgot to dispatch it or something. And everybody's educated by the movies, you know, into believing, you know, that that an aircraft goes up and if it's unreported for 15.5 seconds, but there are rescue squadrons all over the place, you know, and people talking efficiently on phones, and the Coast Guard talking to this, and merchant ships at sea being alerted in all directions, you know, and you have very nice music backgrounding all this up, you know, and so forth. And that isn't the way it's out at all. All of a sudden you hear a plaintive cry someplace or another, and it sounds like a very faint mayday. And somebody's going down somewhere, and you take a radio fix on him, and you instantly radio a base someplace, the nearest aircraft base, and you say, is one of your planes missing? And they say, well, we don't know. We don't know. Well, no, you don't count planes taken off from here. You think we're crazy or something. And, well, is one of your aircraft missing? Well, I don't know. We find out in the next few days. Do you have to know? And you say, well, there's somebody out here yelling, Mayday. Oh? Probably isn't from our base. That's an actual experience. I never did find any aircraft base that knew where any of its aircraft were. So that was pretty good. It's all propaganda, I'm afraid. I don't suppose they abandon all of them. I suppose occasionally when the press boys are around, they suddenly send out somebody to crash and get rescued or something. Here we have, it's a cynical attitude, but they're cynical people. I'm just Q&Aing with it. So I pulled in alongside of the dock, and we're all disgusted, and there's nothing has happened, and we're all beat up and thoroughly dusted by the cruel sea. And we pull up alongside the same dock, and there's Tiny. He's standing there with his kit bag, you know, and he's looking very happy and very cheerful. And he comes aboard and he says to me, Skipper, he says, I didn't have it. I didn't have it. They told me it was something called a non-specific. And I talked to the medicos about this, and they said, oh, yes, we get lots of those. He said, there's no bacteria present, there's nothing present, it's just a tremendous discharge. There's a lot of boys get very, very worried about this sort of thing. I got thinking about it later. I was going over this subject a few years ago, and it occurred to me that obviously venereal disease stops sex. So if sex is stopped, you get venereal disease. Is that the idea? No sex equals venereal disease, because venereal disease equals no sex. And it goes both ways. And you only get this high incidence of VD amongst very sex-starved people. And you get these non-specific venereal diseases, you see, amongst groups of people who haven't anything to do with sex at all. It's quite interesting. Of course, prostitution and so forth, about as close as you can get to no sex. I just ask men around London how close you can get to no sex at all, and they tell you prostitution. I actually conducted a campaign on this some time ago. That's also a sort of a no-sex proposition, you know. So this combines up in various ways, and we've got no sex, and we get over here a no-sex condition. So that's probably what VD is anyhow, because it very often doesn't even exist as bacteria. You got the idea? It's got all the symptoms, and somebody could be worried to death, but it isn't. Well, there's a case of cures suddenly emerging and arising, you see. Now, sex is a cure for no bodies. Okay. That's what sex is a cure for. And then if you get no bodies, of course, why, you get a cure for sex. You get how weirdly and tortuously and involvedly all of this works out. Get the idea? I mean, the cure becomes the cause, becomes the cure, becomes the cause. You know, the illness becomes the cure, becomes the illness, becomes the cure. You see how all this is?